Hello, AD here from the British IBM. We are an indie rock band from Cambridge, UK, not Massachusetts, just in case there's some confusion there. We've been going since 2012 and the band features myself on rhythm guitar and vocals, Dave on backing vocals and bass guitar, and Scott on drums and percussion. The name of the band was derived from a line of dialogue that was featured in the film Micromen.
We could have been the British IBM, but you wouldn't listen to me when you should have, and now look at us.
This is the making of our fourth studio album, Friday Night at the Twitch Bar, which is available on CD from our website, thebritishibm.com. You can also stream it on Spotify and all those kind of places. Or if you're so inclined to do so, you can also back us on Patreon and you'll get access to loads of behind the scenes snippets and whatnot, demos and other bits and pieces, and early access to all sorts of great stuff. But that's enough plugging. Let's get on with the making of Friday Night at the Twitch Bar. Back in 2020, there was a lockdown. As part of that lockdown, or not part of the lockdown, because of the lockdown, I started doing some little acoustic gigs online. I did some acoustic gigs online. A few people tuned in to watch them, surprisingly. So I kept doing them and it became a regular Friday thing. Every Friday I'd do a little Twitch gig. When I first started doing it, it was fairly basic, the setup. It was just me, I'd sit in a swivel chair, I had my camera balanced on the monitor, which is where webcams normally go, and I'd just rattle through some songs from memory that I could kind of remember, and that was it. Then as time progressed, it became quite a slick operation, if I do say so myself. I now put the webcam on a tripod and I actually rehearse the songs. So I come up with a set list in advance and I rehearse the songs. And I even have a foot pedal, so rather than have to press the button on the keyboard or reach over and tap the mouse, I can actually stomp a little foot pedal to go live. After a while, it did actually start to have the feel of a Friday night out it was like a pseudo bar really. So people would go in there, I'd play a few songs, people would have a few drinks, people would be in the chat talking to each other, everyone got to know each other quite well. We've all met up in the real world since the lockdowns ended a few times, which has been lovely. So it has it's not just this little online thing with us bantering and chatting online, it is actually it's permeated the real world since then, which is lovely. But yes, a lot of fun, a lot of banter, and a lot of in-jokes. And a lot of those in-jokes have kind of formed the basis of this album. So to understand some of those in-jokes will go some way towards explaining the album itself and some of the tracks. In-joke number 1. The album title, Friday Night at the Twitch Bar. The title is also a song. The song came about because at some point, like I said, it became like a pseudo bar. We referred to it as the Twitch Bar. Good evening everyone, it's Friday night at the old Twitch Bar. Someone requested off the back of that I write a song. The guy that requested it is called UK Simon, he's a Twitch Bar regular. He requested that I write a song called Friday Night at the Twitch Bar, which referenced all of the little nuances of the Twitch Bar. So I wrote that song. It's the opening track of the album now. It's the title of the album, and it's also the first song that I play the majority of the time every time I do an online acoustic set. There's also reference to a YouTube bar, because when I first started doing this, I used to stream both to YouTube and to Twitch at the same time. Not many people would turn up to the Twitch thing, to the YouTube thing. So the majority of the time, it was people would go to the Twitch channel, not to the YouTube channel. So as a result, it was we said that the YouTube was another bar across the street. So Twitch bar, YouTube bar. No one goes to the YouTube bar anymore. I've closed it. In-joke number 2, which is extremely nerdy. Semicolons are a way of punctuating a line of code in some programming languages. It is also the way that you applaud in the Twitch bar. So if you're happy, you see something you like, you just put semicolons, press enter, bosh, send some semicolons through. In-joke number 3, Kit. Kit is a dog. He is Electron Greg's dog. He has somehow managed to wangle his way into both a song, Hey Kid, I hope you call this home, and and he's on the album cover. If you look very closely at the album cover, you'll see his silhouette in the bar window. In joke number 4 is this. It is Rochester Ginger. Electron Greg loves Rochester Ginger. He loves it so much he talks about it in the chat. His love of Rochester Ginger has become infectious. Now everyone drinks Rochester Ginger. Those of us that drink enjoy to drink it with just a little splash of rum, preferably Kraken rum, and those of us that don't drink just drink it neat. In joke number 5, possibly the most obscure in joke of the lot that's formed from the Twitch bar. Someone at some point was talking about bin days. Someone else went on to talking about refuse trucks. Then at some point someone started talking about films. It's a bar scenario. These things got amalgamated, and then a conversation started about refuse trucks in films. John Veal, I think it was, another Twitch bar regular, found a website that was dedicated to a very, very specific niche, which was this niche, which was refuse trucks in films. It would tell you stuff like there was a Hale Mark III in Commando, and there was a Hale Mark III in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It just listed films that featured refuse trucks. Someone then suggested, and I think this may have been Simon at the time, said, can you make that into a song? So refuse trucks in films was born. In joke number 6, the David J. Watts patented lighter. As well as the semicolons, there is another way of applauding, or if you see something you like, you can hold up a lighter, a virtual lighter. This was because, another tangent, Duncan, I think it was, said, could you make it so that we could hold up, do some animation with a lighter or something so that we could hold up lighters during certain songs? I thought that was a cool idea. David J. Watts was in the chat at the time. He's a very nice person. He's got his own YouTube channel, which you should check out. He went away that evening and he coded it. He actually went and he wrote something very clever I don't quite understand, sent it to me that evening and told me a little video of him configuring it in OBS. And we now, from that point onwards, we had a lighter, and it's called the David J. Watts patented lighter. And you can do something in the Twitch chat thingy, and then a little lighter will pop up at the bottom in a random location and display your message. That is how the David J. Watts patented lighter came about. Thank you, David J. Watts, if you're watching this, by the way. In joke number 7, less of a joke, but it is an in thing. Simon makes piano renditions, composes little piano renditions of British IBM songs. He does that, he films himself with little obscure props in the background of things relating to stuff that might have happened in the Twitch bar. And then he sends those over. I put them into OBS, and then they get played periodically, like at the end of a show maybe, or in the middle as an intermission type thing. And also at the very beginning of before the show starts, you can hear it in the background, so you'll see an intro screen a lot of the time, and you'll hear a piano rendition of Friday Night at the Twitch bar. That is played by UK Simon, and one of them got used at the very end of the album. So the last track on the album is his piano rendition of Friday Night at the Twitch bar. In joke number 8, Electron Greg's animations. Electron Greg is a regular and a very talented coder. He writes stuff on the BBC Micro and Acorn Electron, predominantly the Acorn Electron, I'd like to think, given his name. He has done a whole bunch of stuff. He's done ones with fireworks. He's done a animation which says the British IBM at 8 PM. He's done graphical equalizers. He's done all sorts of cool stuff. And then one of his animations gets used every Friday at the beginning. So along with Simon's piano rendition, you actually see one of his animations playing on a CRT TV. One of the fireworks ones that he's done as well, you can kind of trigger by doing something in the Twitch chat. So if you do something there, you can actually trigger one of his firework animations as well. But yes, very talented individual. Anyway, that is the lowdown on the subtleties, the nuances and the in-jokes that make up Friday Night at the Twitch bar. If you're still watching this, then well done. We will now move on to the more logistical side of things. So at some point I had a whole bunch of new songs that I was performing on a regular basis, and when it happens that you've got enough songs to make up an album, then that's generally what you do. You got enough songs for an album, you make an album. And I don't know about you, but when I want to create a new album, the first thing that I do is to create a big document. There's nothing more rock and roll than a Google document, and it saves you lots of time and therefore money when you finally go to the studio. It contains all the important information about chord progressions, lyrics, BPMs, potential overdubs, and it also answers any questions that Dave and Scott might ask me at some point in the future when all of this stuff will have left my head. So when the document was finished, Scott and I headed over to a rehearsal room in Cambridge, where we went through how we thought the drums might sound, which just involved us essentially just playing the songs together a whole bunch of times. And then periodically, when we thought, yeah, that sounds pretty good, we'd set up a camera phone and record ourselves playing that song, so we'd have an idea later on when we're in the studio, when Scott asked the question, goes, what did I play on kit again? That sounded really good, that thing I did in the rehearsal room. We can go back on the mobile phone and go, that's what you played, Scott, and then we know. Next rehearsal was Scott and myself, and we were this time joined by Dave, who figured out how the bass would sound.
Hello, I'm David. I've been in the British IBM for 9 years.
Since 2012, wasn't it, Dave?
2012. January 1st, 2012.
And before that as well.
And before.
Do you remember 22?
I do remember 22.
It's making a comeback. What guitar have you got, Dave?
Today I have a Fender Jazz Bass, a Highway 1. It cost me £550 when it should have cost me £1,000, so I got it for a very good price.
That is a good bargain. How'd you get it for that cheap?
Because Digital Village were in the process of going bankrupt.
After all of the documentation, rehearsing and general nonsense, we then headed into a studio, Sick Room Studios to be more specific, which is run by a very talented individual called Owen. Owen recorded the last 2 albums and a whole bunch of singles for us. He did Where Is Matthew Smith, Jet Set Willie and Elevator, as well as the previous 2 albums. So that's where we went to start work on Friday night at the Twitch Bar. We managed to record the entire thing, the stuff that involves just us being in the studio, we managed to do over 3 weekends. Due to how good we are at documenting and rehearsing, you can save loads of time and money. So 3 weekends is essentially what it took of us, not including the stuff that Owen does behind the scenes, but us being in a room. Weekend number 1, you're laying down the foundations of the album. This, as we all know, foundations of an album, an indie rock album at least, is bass and drums. So first things first, we got Scott in there playing drums and setting up his kit. He sets up left-handed because he's left-handed. Scott is a left-handed drummer.
I am.
As a result, whenever he gets to a studio or rehearsal room, he has to swap everything round. All the greats were left-handed, weren't they?
Yes. Sure.
Kurt Cobain was left-handed.
Was he?
Paul McCartney, yeah.
John Bonham.
John Bonham.
I'm sure he was
Was he?
I don't know, I'm going to say yes.
I'd imagine quite a lot of serial killers probably were.
Yeah. Left-handed and right-handed, maybe. Ambidextrous.
Scott is very good at playing to a click track, which is incredibly handy because it is one of the most, what's the word I'm looking for? I was going to say it's an underrated skill, but it's not an underrated skill. It's a very rated skill. It's a rated skill. Scott is very good at playing to a click track. So the way that we recorded the drums was, in some cases, there was a demo that existed that he could just play along to. So the demo was quantized and all the rest of it, so he could just play along to that, and that would get the drums done. Another way that he would record is that Dave and I would kind of be isolated away from him, and we'd all 3 of us play together. He would play to the click track. I hate listening to a click track. I don't think Dave particularly likes it either, but no one wants to listen to that beep, boop, boop, boop. But Scott quite enjoys it. So he hears the click track, we hear Scott, we play to Scott, which is quite nice. So we kind of play more or less like a proper band, because we are a proper band, believe it or not. that's how we got the drums done. So we did a whole bunch of takes like that where we just played together as a band, figured out the BPM where we need to slow down and speed up on some songs to make everything sound optimal. And then in some cases during those recording sessions, we actually got bass recorded at the same time, which was a nice to have. So Dave was playing the bass, that went off to a DI, and I think it was possibly mic'd up as well at that stage. So we had like bass and drums. But yeah, after all of the drums were done, the next part was for Dave to start playing his bass guitar. So that's just, we all step out of the room. It's just Dave in there on his own. He plays along to the drums that have already been recorded, and he does that via, this is very logistical, he has a breakout box that he plays through that goes through to a DI, so we've got a DI from his bass, and then he's also playing through an amp, and the amp gets mic'd up as well. So we've basically got two versions of the same bass line that he's recording to mix into the final songs. But yeah, we got all of that done. We got everything done over that first weekend in terms of the foundation. So all of the bass, all of the drums were done, and I can't remember, I think maybe a tiny bit of guitar as well during that first weekend. Weekend number 2 is all about vocals and rhythm guitar. Normally at this point, because the bass has already been done and the drums has already been done, it's just me doing my thing now. Dave and Scott aren't normally around for this, but on this occasion Scott decided to come along and have some beers and hang out, which was quite pleasant. First day got all of the guitar done, so playing along to what's already there, so the foundations are there, and Aaron had done some tidying up between the weekends, however much space there was between those weekends, so I just played along to that. So I played both types of guitar, which, as we know, there's only 2 types of guitar in the world. There is acoustic guitar and electric guitar. Got all of that recorded on the first day. Second day, got all the vocals done. I wanna live in California. At which point, you've pretty much got a fully formed indie rock song. And you could walk away at that point and that would be it. You've got an album done. But obviously we're a professional band. We like to go that little bit further. So at this point, we'll just leave it. Owen takes those tracks. We step away from the studio for a while. Owen will do a whole bunch of clever stuff that we don't particularly understand, such as he sits there and does his EQing, his compression, selecting the best takes, just tweaking stuff, and there's a bit of back and forth between us. He'll drop box us some bits and pieces here and there, and we'll listen to those and feedback on anything we need to feedback on, and then at some point we'll have a whole set of what the album is going to sound like minus the overdubs, and you can use those tracks to then figure out what the overdubs might sound like. If you think at that point you start to think, oh, I can hear a bit of strings in here, I could hear maybe an extra guitar part here or some harmonies here. Third weekend, which is the most fun weekend of all the weekends, Scott, Dave and myself all headed to the studio for one final weekend where we were all going to be together for this, and that is the overdub weekend, which is, even though it's fairly ad hoc, but there still is, I create a little spreadsheet, so I've got an idea of overdubs that we'd like to do or we'd like to try out, and what we think is completely done. It's colour coded so that you can actually see rows of green appearing as tracks are done, and you've added everything that you want to add to that for the time being. So it's just the right amount of chaos and planning. So on the ad hoc side of things, we've got stuff like Scott actually plays glockenspiel, used to play glockenspiel in some kind of I'm not sure, like a school band or a scout band or something like that, but he can play glockenspiel. There was a massive glockenspiel at Sick Room Studios, so Scott came up with some little parts. We used some glockenspiel on quite a few tracks actually. It's more notable on some than others. There's, on the mid-late of Kit, it's got a bit of glock. There is some glock on, I think there's a tiny bit in Photographs and a little bit on King of Everything as well. So we got worked glock into a few. There's also a whole array of percussion stuff in Sick Room Studios. It's like an Aladdin's cave of instruments and stuff that makes noise. So again, Scott will go around and search for stuff and we'll try stuff out. So we've got a whole load of percussion done during that session. French horn.
Oh,
Owen himself is a multi-instrumentalist. He's very good at lots of things other than being in the studio. He plays in a band called Magoo, so he can play stuff as well as record stuff. He can play piano, so all the little bits that I've done where I might have come up with overdubs at home and done it using MIDI, he can actually play a proper piano, so he would replay my MIDI parts on a piano properly to give it a nicer sound. He can also play trumpet, and he has a trumpet. So we persuaded him to get the trumpet out of retirement, and for the first time ever we put trumpet on a track which was on 22. And it turns out that Owen plays trumpet, and we thought for a bit of difference we'd add trumpet to this song. So we're experimenting at the moment with trumpets, with real trumpet.
did you know that the Queen has an official shoe wearer who breaks in her shoes?
Dave has a whole bunch of guitar pedals. Dave is not only a bass player, he's also an accomplished guitarist. He has got several guitars and lots of pedals. He brought his bag of pedals down with him. It's day 2 doing overdubs. Dave's in today.
I'm David.
Dave has done some guitar overdubs. He's brought lots of pedals with him. He's got this selection here, small tone, small cheapy one there, a weird little modular one that he was showing me a minute ago. This one here almost works like a video game's console. You unplug that module at the top and you can plug that one and turn it from being an auto filter to a liquid flange.
For distortion sounds, we've been using this OCD, full tone OCD, and then we've been going into this Marshall, our ancient Marshall JTM 60. It sounds pretty good. Do you want to hear a bit of it?
Sounds awesome.
Right.
So we've done Charlie Sheen, California. We've got a nice little bit of reverby, very subtle guitar on.
And for that, we used the Boss digital reverb delay, the RV3.
My most favourite bit of lead that he did on the album is this little line, this little guitar phrase that he put onto Gasoline, which sounds like this. And then we worked on backing. I think everyone had a go at backing vocals at some point. I feel like everyone steps up to the mic. So Dave and I generally sing on quite a few songs together.
I wanna live in California.
And then I think even Owen stepped up to the mic at some point, especially when we did the Friday night at the Twitch bar, which we wanted the chorus to have loads of voices on. So there was a lot of people singing on Friday night at the Twitch bar. And then we put on some really, this is a new plugin that Owen had, which was kind of like a synth backing vocal. It was like a countrified vocal choir thing that he had, and it sounded really cool. So it was an experiment. We put it onto refuse trucks with films and listened back to it. It actually sounded really cool. We spent a lot of time tweaking it and tuning it to make it sound just right, but it's got a very different sound to normal backing vocals. It's kind of like you can't quite put your finger on whether or not it's real or not. It's somewhere, it's not completely synthy, but it's not completely organic either. It's somewhere in the middle, and it's got quite a cool little sound as a result. You ready? And then a few more overdubs got done, things that we couldn't do in the studio. So I used some kind of jobbing websites. I can't think of what the websites I've used now, but some websites where you can get hold of other musicians that might be able to do something that you can't do. So two examples of that were, I think I had some female backing vocals I wanted, so I got those done by someone that I found online. Got some cello and some viola, which we used on stuff like California. And Charlie Sheen. Those are, I'd already kind of done the synthy strings, but I didn't want synth strings on the album, I wanted real strings, so got those replayed properly. Some cello and some more cello. and then lap steel as well. There's a guy that I found who did the lap steel for, what did he do it for? And he did something on the I Don't Miss the 80s he did lap steel on. It sounded very good, so I contacted him again and said, would you do some lap steel for refuse trucks and films? And he said yes he would, provided I pay him. So I paid him and he did them. While all this is going on, there's also quite a lot of multitasking. So not only is it kind of the last bits of the album being recorded, but you're trying to get the last bits of other jobs done. So track listings, figuring out the order that the tracks were going to go in. I knew that Friday Night at the Twitch Bar was going to be the first track, and then the last track would be the piano rendition of that, and then it was figuring out the order of everything in between. The artwork as well, because Daryl Blythe did the artwork he's done the artwork for everything pretty much. All the albums have been done by Daryl. I sent him the idea for the new artwork, and I really like the idea of continuing it across all the albums. Like apart from the first album, which is its own thing, all the rest of the albums have kind of got a very similar look. So I gave him the ideas for the latest one and the track listings at some point at the beginning of the project, and then when I knew the final list of the credits and everything else, I could give him that. He finished all that kind of stuff off. Let the duplicator know what was going on as well, and just so that he was ready to go when the final master came in. And then when it finally happens and the last set of masters come through and there's no more changes that need to be made, the first thing that I do, the very first thing, is to get all of that onto Bandcamp, because Bandcamp's a great little site. So it's there digitally. It's not ready for release yet, but it's there. Create some download codes, leave it as a private thing, and then give it straight away to the Patreons, because without the Patreons there would be no album. It's pretty much the funding that comes from Patreon that goes straight into the studio and records these last albums. So Patreons get it straight away. The duplicator obviously gets everything that he needs at this point as well. And then the final thing that happens, at some point, a parcel arrives in the post with CDs. Then you've got the CDs then go out to the patrons as well. And then there's a little bit of a break and a little bit of thinking about when we actually want to put it out into the real world, and some kind of scheduling and a release date and all the rest of it. So there you go. That's how we made Friday Night at the Twitch Bar. A very logistical making of there for you. If you made it all the way to the end, well done. Thanks very much again to the Patreons, because without the Patreons, I've said it once, I've said it again, and I'll say it lots more times, without the Patreons there would be no Friday Night at the Twitch Bar. This album wouldn't exist, and a lot of the new music that we're doing wouldn't exist, because it's their money that is actually paying for the studio time. So massive thanks.